The Boy, a story from the house of Cain. They got his daddy. They got his mommy. He was only 8, so he just ran. All he could think of was the last words his daddy spoke to him. Run, son. Run like you've never run before. And don't stop. That was before the monster. Thing that looked like a dog but bigger than their car. It ate. Alex ran. Alex could still hear his mommy screaming as the 4 men circled her, calling her names, grown-up names. She was afraid, and her fear scared him. They ripped her dress, the flowery sundress her father had given her, falling away. He ran. It was his fault. He was the one. Alex begged his daddy to take them camping for weeks and weeks. But all he wanted to do was go up to the lake and fish and have a good time. But it was his fault. He ran. The men pulled up in an old truck. One, the driver, in a cowboy hat, and a bunch of friends. They seemed friendly enough. Howdy, folks, he began as he walked up, pulling his hat from his head. Saw your fire and thought we'd say hello, as we're going to be neighbors this week and all. He gestured across the campground where a travel trailer sat. Alex snickered and looked at his tent and smiled. His daddy assured him that they would do it right. Camp like real old-fashioned settlers or cowboys. My name's Roman, the man said, holding out his hand to Alex's daddy. Bart, Daddy replied, taking the man's hand. This is my wife Sylvia and our boy Alex. The man placed his hat back on his head and stepped over to Alex's mommy. Sylvia, he said, and he took her hand. And then he did something that seemed strange to Alex, and he didn't really understand. Now, Alex was 8, not stupid. He'd seen television, played video games, and he knew that in the olden time days, boys kissed girls' hands to make them feel special. Or at least that's how Mommy explained it. Daddy just winked at him and said it was all a game. Alex thought it was gross to kiss anybody's hand. He never knew where that stuff was or had been. But this man, he didn't kiss his mama's hand. He sniffed it, smelled it. And then Alex knew he must have been seeing things because the man's eyes, for just a moment, glowed yellow. Alex ran on. As he ran, the trees moved past him. He could feel his chest as it tightened, like a fire was building inside. He had to run, keep running. Monsters were coming. He could feel them, could feel their anger, their rage, their want for his blood. He could almost hear them. He ran on. Suddenly, the other men were surrounding his daddy. The man tightened his grip on his mother's hand, and she tried to jerk away. The man in the cowboy hat chuckled. Well, darling, well, that's not very neighborly of you. The way he said it, it was strange, hungry. What are you? His daddy began, before one of the other men punched Bart in the stomach. The man spoke to Sylvia. Well, dear, I don't think you quite understand what's going on here. See if I can explain it to you. Alex saw his mommy's eyes. They were scared, and it scared him even more because he'd never seen her scared. Not really. He'd seen her worried, but he had never seen her scared. Alex ran on. He could hear the monsters, really hear them as he continued to put his one foot in front of the other, forcing his body to keep going. They were finished with his parents, whatever they were doing to them, and now they were coming to him to eat him, just like they had eaten his daddy. He felt the tears roll down his cheeks, just as the sweat ran into his eyes from his forehead. He squinted. He was blind and could hear their breaths bouncing behind him in the trees as they drew the air deep in their chests, trying to outpace him. Alex ran on. He stumbled, his knees hitting the ground. He jumped up and remembered as he ran. You see, darling, we have a condition, the boys and I. He paused, but he looked at Alex's mommy like he was starving, like he hadn't eaten a meal in a long time. And man, with this, he stepped closer to mommy. Condition. See, we can only mate with women of certain gene types. At least that's what the doctors say. That was when mommy screamed. Alex ran on. I'll kill you, Bart growled before another of men punched him again, and they continued to punch him. Roman turned toward the beating, and he nodded to one of the men just standing there. They stopped hitting Alex's daddy, and he lay there, squirming on the ground. The man in the cowboy hat, Roman, let go of Sylvia's hand, but only just switched places with the men. That was when they tore his mommy's dress. He walked toward Alex's daddy and smiled. I don't think you understand, Bart. You can't kill me. Well, not unless you got a hell of a lot of silver with you, and I don't think you do. Not many people carry that much stuff around with them worth a whole lot of money. Roman paused and took his hat off and stared at it while he scratched his chin. We're gonna have some sport, you see, with you, 'cause you're mine. Just like your wife is now mine. And your son. See, we got some special sport for her. He chuckled, his eyes glowing. You see, I might even turn your son. Turn? What are you talking about? Alex's mother screamed, struggling to get away, to come to Alex and hold him, to keep the men away. Roman cocked his head and laughed. You really don't know, do you? And then he squatted and squinted up at the overcast sky and shrugged. He looked over at Alex and winked, and it sent shivers right down Alex's spine. His knees felt weak because he'd never had anything happen to him that scared him this much. Not as much as Roman's wink. Roman sat his white cowboy hat on the ground next to him, being very particular and careful not to get soil on it, and turned to Bart. See, I'm going to show you a little magic trick, neighbor. Sylvia, you and your husband are going to have to understand. You have no more power. I have all the power. Alex saw something then that he would have never believed possible, even in his wildest nightmares. The man's fingertips stretched out as his hands stretched and deformed to reshape themselves The fingertips burst in a spray of blood and gore as long, black, shiny claws started coming out of them. Alex heard bones pop and scrape, and it made him shiver as if somebody had drawn their nails across a chalkboard. Then the knot man, the thing that was Roman, reached up to his head and seemed to tear at something. Skin and hair and blood and gore fell away from the crouched figure. And then when it stood, it was a man-dog thing, huge, taller than a basketball goal, and its fur was wet with its own crimson blood. Alex locked eyes with his father's. "Run, son, run like you've never run before, and don't stop." Alex ran on. He could hear them now, as he ran, as he stumbled, as he tried to get away, get to somewhere he knew not. They looked like wolves, but not like the ones he had seen on TV, big and black and a pack together. But they weren't like those wolves. They were bigger, many times bigger. They were nastier. The power, the strength, and the instincts of the apex predator, the only thing humans have been afraid of since time immemorial, under the control of a logical mind that could control it, or not control it, however they chose. Alex didn't know any of this. He was only an 8-year-old boy, and he knew that monsters were chasing him. So Alex ran. The monster that used to be the cowboy stepped forward and bit down on Alex's body, on Alex's daddy. The beast bit him right where his neck met his chest and shoulder. Alex stood frozen, only partially hearing his mommy's terrified scream, and watched his daddy's blood spurt from between the monster's clenched jaws. That was when he ran. They started howling. Alex couldn't breathe. They were going to catch him, and they were going to eat him alive, just like they ate his daddy. He could see it in his mind. The clenched jaws, the spray of blood. His chest was going to pop like a balloon. He couldn't run anymore. His legs. He could feel the making, pounding, deep inside, and his bones hurt. No. He couldn't remember that. It reminded him of the monsters and how they were once men, and how their bones popped and scraped, and it was a pain beyond imagining. Alex burst out of the woods, and he found himself on a blacktop road, and he stopped. For what he saw, he couldn't understand. A man stood there, in the middle of the road, in front of a truck, with light shining into his face. The man had blue eyes, and held 2 gleaming knives in either hand, big, curved knives. Alex was scared, but the man had a gentle smile, and there were monsters behind him. "Alex," the man said gently, "it is very important that you get behind me very quickly before the wolves arrive, okay?" Alex hesitated. "But who are you?" he asked. Again, the man was gentle and patient. "My name is Jackson Kane. I am a friend of your father." Alex screamed, "They ate my daddy!" And he ran for the man. Kane caught him, wrapping him in his arms. And even as he did so, 4 forms melted out of the underbrush and approached the blacktop of the road, lit only by the lights of a single pickup truck. Alex saw a tattoo then, and it was on the man's forearm. It called to him. It told him to forget. It was a dragon. He knew it was a dragon. He played enough video games after all. But it looked alive. Like it wanted to move. Like it was real. It twisted around the man's arm like a snake. And it was red and gold and looked wet as if it was freshly born. Jackson glanced down at the boy and then at the tattoo. Don't worry about that, Alex. It's okay now. Do you know what used to be black? What is it? The child asked, even though he knew he shouldn't, that there were monsters here. But the tattoo, it promised him it could take the monsters away. He didn't have to think about the monsters. He didn't have to think about the monsters that ate his daddy. Oh, well, it's nothing really. Jackson Cain, scion of Cain, son of Adam, brother of Seth and Abel, Cain who lied under the face of God. Jackson Cain, hunter of monsters, stepped forward, his strange curved knives held high, and he smiled down at Alex. It's just the mark of Cain. The end. Once again, thank you for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. It either entertained or gave you some knowledge to help you. Please leave a comment and let me know how I'm doing, how I can do better. And remember, always like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.